Are you struggling when it comes to holding your team or employees accountable?
Or is the lack of accountability hindering your process? Today's topic, 3 reasons why accountability doesn't work.
Welcome to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart.
And I'm Taria Hodge.
And the big question is this: how does the average entrepreneur like us, who started with limited time, zero marketing budget, and little to no online presence, get their authentic message into the marketplace and become a person of influence?
And what skills must you learn? And most importantly, who are you required to become to magnetically attract your divine client and build a loyal following? Welcome, Suzanne, to another fantastic episode of the Influencers Journey Show. I am super excited for today's topic. I am ready. I'm going to let everyone know, our super achievers know, that this session is a mentoring session for me. So I got my notebook and I have my pen right here, and I suggest our super achievers do the same. Grab a pen, grab some paper, and take some notes because it's going to be a juicy topic today.
I love it. I love it. I think this is such an important topic for anyone who's sitting in a leadership position, which is everybody, every super achiever. You sit in a leadership position. And remember, leaders aren't necessarily those who have the title. It is you lead exactly where you stand in our world. And I think what's really exciting about this topic, Taria, is it's something that most of us struggle with.
Right.
Accountability.
Yes.
I was working with a client recently, and one of the challenges this individual is facing is accountability with her team. And as we talked through it, it wasn't so much that she had difficulties with accountability. It was that she had, how do you say? She hadn't set herself up for accountability to actually work. So, one of the things we said, 3 reasons why accountability doesn't work, it's not necessarily that accountability doesn't work. It's how most of us are doing accountability that has it not worked. So we're going to dive right into that. And this was a topic, Taria, that for me was life-changing, because when I truly understood what it was and how to implement it, magic began to happen.
Yeah, and it's really good because I'm just going to say this. One of the things that I struggled with as an entrepreneur, and sometimes I still get tripped up about it, is like documenting the process, getting things out of my head and being organized. And so I know when we first started talking about accountability, I had a whole different spin on what accountability really meant. And then the light bulb went off like, oh, so this is why sometimes, you could have an accountability partner and things not move the needle. So, I've been that person too, who've been in accountability groups, and every week you kind of show up to the accountability call, and then it's like this, oh, what did you get done? Nothing. What did you get done? Nothing. And then we just go around in that round robin, and then you find yourself asking the question, does accountability really work?
And why am I doing this? So how many of you, like Tria and myself, have been part of an accountability process and no accountability is actually happening? And you're wondering, this is so uncomfortable. This is so weird. And it feels like a waste of time. So we're going to talk about how you set it up to win, how you set it up for success.
All right.
So if you're just joining us, hello, I'm Suzanne. Of course, I'm sitting down with Taria, and we would like you to, as you jump on, please let us know who you are, where on the planet you're joining us from, and what brought you out today. What about this topic enticed you to stop and say, man, I got to listen? As you do so, please let us know what you do while you're living and who are you passionate about serving? Who are your people? Who is your tribe? Let us know that. As the show goes on, light up the comment section. Let us know what you're taking away. Let us know what you want to learn more about. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section. And for those of you who are listening to the replay, definitely hashtag replay. Let us know you're listening and do the exact same thing. Comment. Let us know where you're joining us from, what you do while you're living, and who are you passionate to serve? Why are you here? And I always invite everyone, as the comments are going on, to get to know each other. This is a virtual networking opportunity. You never know who you're going to find commenting on this show alongside you. I know we have met some amazing people who've just popped on and commented, and we're like, "Ooh, gotta reach out to that person."
Absolutely love it, love it, love it. And before we get into the heart of the show, I just want to remind our super achievers, if you have not done it already, now is your opportunity to grab your freestyle speaker playbook. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is an amazing resource for all of you super achievers out there who want to implement speaking and storytelling to make your presentations go bigger. Okay, so look in the description of the video. You will see the link to the freestyle speaker playbook. If you have not grabbed it already, make sure that you do. And then lastly, if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, take a moment, hit the subscribe button, so that way whenever we go live, you will be able to get the notifications. And then plus, do us a favor, share this video with another super achiever.
I love it. All right. Well, let's get this conversation started, Taria. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome back to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart. This is my girl, social media strategist, Taria Hodge. And our topic today is 3 reasons why accountability does not work. I love the title, by the way. It's kind of like a setup, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so I think it's a perfect layup for the very first question that I want to ask you. And so in your definition, Suzanne, exactly what is accountability?
So I came up with this definition a while back. It's probably been about almost 20 years now. And for me, I make up words, if you know, or definitions to help me embody and apply something that I don't truly understand. So accountability means to account for your ability. Accountability. Account for your ability. Now, why would I say that? Because oftentimes we are totally capable of doing something. We are totally gifted, talented. We know how. We are not just accounting for it. We are not holding ourselves to the commitment and the task of doing what we know. So, and there's many reasons why we don't, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it really is to account for your ability. Now, this is the interesting thing. No one can do it for you. And so when people think about accountability and accountability partners and all this wonderful stuff, they're like, well, why do I have an accountability partner if no one can do this accountability thing for me? So you ready for your notes?
Yes,
ready?
I got my book right here. I'm ready.
This was the conversation that had Tria go, oh, okay. So this is what I have learned, and this is how I come to do accountability. I am not going to chase you around telling you you need to do the thing, because if I do, you're not committed. My only responsibility as your partner in accountability, as your leader, as your manager, for those of you who still do that thing called management, because we don't. If that is your thing, your role, then your only responsibility to the person to whom you have agreed to hold accountable is to hold a mirror up to them and reflect back to them who they're being in the moment. So your accountability is the act of asking your partner great questions. And what happens is, as the person sees who they be, they now get an opportunity to choose change. If they don't choose change, nothing you can do about it. If they don't choose improvement, nothing you can do about it. If they don't choose make your best better, nothing you can do about it. And if that pattern continues, what you really have is someone who's not actually committed to the process they said they were. And I would recommend exiting. However, in the challenge of holding up the mirror, if the person is truly committed, a beautiful discussion will incur about where they might be stuck, what is the fear, how they might be poorly managing their time. They will introduce a reason why they haven't actually fulfilled on their commitment. And now you get to brainstorm with them. You get to help them find a solution. You get to help them find an answer, and then they recommit and keep going. It's not a scolding. It's not any of those things. Why didn't you do it? It is, okay, well, let me show you what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, and I love it. And so thank you, because I remember the first time we had that conversation and you introduced the definition of accountability for me. It totally put a spin on it, because I was that person who thought accountability was I have to go and hunt people down and I have to ask the questions, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then conversely, the same thing with me. You know, people are like, oh, you said that you was going to do this. Why didn't this happen? And it almost had, not almost, it definitely did have a negative connotation, like when you hear accountability. So once you introduce the definition of accountability being accounting for your ability, it totally, first of all, shifted my mindset and gave me a different way to look at the word. And so, you know, why, Suzanne, is this absolutely necessary? Why is it necessary for us as individuals, and then also for us who are growing teams? And like you said, for those people who are still, you know, in the 9 to 5 space, and they're growing their teams that way, and you said that they're still in the process of managing, or they consider themselves a manager. Why is this so necessary?
Well, I think it's necessary because we live in a time right now where leaders are so needed. And we live in a time where I need to be able to find solutions to challenges.
Mhm.
And so when I'm willing to go through the process of finding solutions to challenges, I'm actually building a very important muscle, right? How often have you been stopped by your fear, stopped by overwhelmed, stopped by I don't know how, stopped by all these things, and have nowhere to go to talk it through? The process of accountability is teaching us to find a space to talk through things,
Right.
right? Not to sit in I can't, or sit in our frustration, or sit in our overwhelm. Just the act of me coming to you and saying, hey, I'm not moving. I need to work through this. Will you help me? I am now initiating an accountability process that probably wasn't there. I'm holding myself accountable to, one, what I committed, but two, to what I believe I can accomplish. Now, believing I can accomplish and knowing I have the ability does not mean I know how in the moment.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
really want people to get that, because how often we think, well, I can't because I don't know how. Not knowing how doesn't mean you can't.
Mm.
Just means you can't see it yet.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I love that. Okay. So we're going to move on to I think the most critical piece of this whole conversations, and it's about systems. And
Mhm.
why is it that systems are so important in the accountability process?
Before we move, Tria, and before we talk about systems, I wanna just set it up by this other piece. Is that, have you ever not seen the forest for the trees?
I always love that expression.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that means. Have you ever though?
Yes.
Right? Like something is so obvious, but because you're so in it, you can't
Right.
see it. One of the beautiful things about this accountability process is that oftentimes talking through something out loud
Mhm.
with another person actually helps you see what you didn't see when you were by yourself. And so when your accountability person holds a mirror up to you and says, well, you seem kind of afraid.
Mhm.
And you're able to pull back and go, yeah, I'm kind of nervous.
Mhm.
And you're able to talk through it. It is the act of talking through the
Right.
challenge that often creates clarity. Like, how often have we had conversations where I've come to you or you've come to me, and you're talking it through, and I find the answer. You found the answer in the middle of unpacking it and talking to me. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times we have what we do is stay in our head. And then when we stay in our head, it's like that perpetual, cycle or circle that you go round and round. And that's why it's so important to get it out of your head. And like you said, oftentimes when you speak it or oftentimes when you write it down, it brings a little bit more clarity to the process.
Yeah. And so this is the really important thing. And this was one of the lessons I learned from one of my leaders back in the day. So if you're an accountability partner, you don't have to have the answer. You need to hold the space for someone to find the answer for themselves, find the solution. So as an accountability partner, your goal is not to scold, not to make someone feel wrong, not to have them sit in shame or any of those or guilt. It is actually to ask brilliant questions, ask curiosity-provoking questions that has the person begin to think and has the person begin to see who they be in this moment, and have them dig in so that they can become solution focused and they can find the answer. Because really, the answer is there. They just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So now I'll go to your and why it's so key. So you asked why systems create the foundation for accountability. And I'm going to use one of my favorite analogies. Okay. So you go to the airport.
Yes.
You have a time where you're supposed to be on your plane, boarded, seatbelt in, ready to leave before the door closes. You know that time, right? And you get to the airport on time. They even tell you, be at the airport 3 hours before, be at the airport 2 hours before, depending on what your flight is. Now imagine you didn't get a time that you needed to be at the airport. You knew your flight left at this time, but you didn't get a time.
Right.
And when you got to the airport had no signs.
Ooh.
Okay. All you know is you need to get to your gate by a certain time. If you miss your flight, do you think the airline has a right to hold you accountable?
No, because the first thing you would say, well, I didn't get all the information that I needed to be successful.
And you'd be like, how would you ever expect me to get from point A to point B when you didn't give any directions? How am I supposed to come in here and know exactly where to go? There would be a whole conversation around, you didn't set me up to win. So why that is so key is the airport is such a great analogy for this, because the airport sets you up from the moment you book your flight to win. And they have all these systems from when do you get there, where do you go when you get there, where your ticket counter is. The person who checks you in tells you where to go next. They tell you how many bags you can get. They can tell you how many you can check, what do you got to pay for, where to go, what you need to have in your hand, who you need to show it to, when you should be at your gate, when he's boarding. They tell you everything. It's called a system. And as a result of having this very clear system, they are now in a position to hold you accountable to being on your seat, buckled up when the doors close. Yes?
Yeah.
So this is a question. How many of you out there are holding people accountable, yet you have not set up the system where they know what they're responsible for?
Yeah. And I love that, because one of the things that I got present to in my business, and I like to term it as being organized for health. So sometimes, we want to grow our teams and we want to grow our business, and we have all these things that we want to, get off our plate, and we're looking for team members, we're looking for new hires to help us with them. And I struggled in the beginning because I just expected for people to read my mind and just go ahead and do it. And then not even creating a space to have a conversation to happen. And then having just a huge breakdown. So there's frustration on their end, frustration on my end. And what I had to come present to is like, I didn't really have a system. I didn't have a process in place. Everything that I did was in my head. And I just expected, I do believe people can get to the point where they can read each other's minds, but we're not there yet. But that's what I expected, like for people to actually peek into my brain, know exactly what's going on, and then accomplish the task at hand. And I had to learn the hard way through trial and error. It doesn't happen that way. So what are the systems and the processes that I am clearly documenting and putting in place that would allow, my team to be successful?
Absolutely. And there's nothing more frustrating for a new person entering an organization, a team, and not having a start place
Mhm.
and not having clear expectations. And two things happen when this occurs. There will be the people who are too afraid to risk,
Right.
and they will do nothing. And then people get upset with them because they're not producing. Well, I or you didn't create the context for them to actually produce and win.
Right.
Now, then there's the people, this is Suzanne, who said, oh, you didn't give me a process, I just gonna make one up,
Yeah.
right? Now, what happens is depending on the personality of that person, they will change the culture of your organization. They will start to make changes because the person who builds the systems and the processes is actually the person leading.
Yeah.
And so what begins to happen is if you don't have these systems in place, for many people, they have anarchy, they have confusion, they have underproduction, they have production in ways they don't want, they have things going on in their organization that they are not approving of,
Mhm.
and now they want to hold people accountable. And usually when a client comes to me in this place, I'll go, but you didn't set them up. So if they don't know what's expected, they will make it up and they'll do it their way. And then they'll get upset and frustrated when you come to them
Change it.
criticizing their way when you gave them nothing.
Yeah.
Because in their mind, well, at least I initiated action because you
Mhm.
gave me no clarity.
Mhm.
It's either going to be that, or have you ever had this? The person comes and goes, I'm walking down the hall, is that okay? And you're like, yeah, it's fine. Okay. And comes back 10 minutes later. I walk down the hall, I'm about to open the door and look in the filing cabinet. And you're just like, could you not do anything on your own? Well, they could if there was a process, a system for them to follow. So you have two ends of the spectrum. The person who doesn't yet have the confidence and
Right.
does not want to fail, doesn't want to risk making a mistake. So you're going to feel like you need to micromanage them. You do not, you just have to give them some clarity. And then you'll have the person who's like, oh, this is a wild, wild west. I get to make stuff up. I'm just going to take charge and do things my way. And then they'll be off and you'll be like, how did you get over here? And they'll have a logical reason. It's not what you wanted, but it's a reason. So we've got both ends, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I love you said something in there that kind of stood out for me. You said the person who owns the process becomes the leader of the process. And and I think I want to ask a question. This might be veering off a little bit, but I think I want to ask this question. And for us as leaders who hold the original vision, how much of that process do we allow someone else to run with, and how much of it do we create?
That's a great question. So I think it's a combination of both. I have rarely built a process in isolation.
Mhm.
And so when I got into management and started leading a team, and we're going to get into those distinctions on another call, on another video. But when I got into to leadership and managing and leading a team, one of the things I soon realized was that if I built processes totally in isolation, I had little to no buy-in. And this was the reason why, since I wasn't the person doing the work that I was often building the process for, I didn't have the bird's eye view. I didn't have the experience of it. So when I used to arrive with a new team, I would actually go and live all the areas that I was responsible for, so I could see how it was occurring, whether they had a process or not. Now, often I got hired because it was chaos and there was no processes. And my job was to come and people would say, help the team become more productive and more accountable and more this and more that. And really what it was whoever was leading before didn't give them a baseline.
Right.
So I would go in and I would live the process, and I would ask great questions, and I would ask for ideas. And then when I was actually about to build it, I would kind of create a think tank and have people and kind of walk through. And now I've got a process that was guided by me and built with the feedback of those who are going to live it. And now I've got buy-in. Now I've got feedback. I've got lived experience, and we've probably got more of an agreement. They will give me blind spots that I can't see. I will give them blind spots that they won't know about, because we're coming at it from two different perspectives. So for me, Charia, as much as possible, I'm going to build it with you. That being said, before anybody arrives in my organization, I'm going to build some key systems. One would be a vision. A vision's a pathway. And people go, how's a vision a process? It sets a direction of where you're going to go. I'm going to have core values or guiding principles, which is how we're going to get there. And I don't mean whether we're going to bike, run, or walk. It's going to be the experience that we want to have while getting there. That is a process, is a system. And people may not look at it that way, but when I have my guiding principles laid out, what people can now see is this is the energy and environment and attitude to which we are going to get anywhere, right? I am going to really map out the expectations of every role in my organization. Why are you here? What am I looking for from you? And then I'm going to have a loose process. And the loose process is really built on where I want you to take me and how I want to get there. And then from that's enough guide for you to get started. And then together, we're going to tighten up the process because I want buy-in. I'm not going to have someone come in to the wild, wild west where I haven't thought through anything, because I know that it's going to create chaos and it's going to create conflict.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why does accountability create leaders?
It is really such a beautiful thing. And let's get into management versus leadership, right? And one of the things is management is really moving someone through a process that was predetermined, right? Okay. So we're going from here to here. This is the process. I don't want you to veer off it. I have a deadline for you. This is how we do it here. Yes. Okay. And there's very little leeway for creativity, individuality, all these different things. And accountability is really tight. And what I mean by tight is there's not a lot of dialogue. Did you get it done? This is the deadline. It's very, very systematic and tight. If you want to use accountability in my world to create leaders, what you're going to do is you're going to build a process, you're going to build a structure, and you're going to ask people to bring their brilliance, their creativity, and their expertise to that process. Hence, one is I like to build out the process with you. And I want that person to be constantly evaluating the effectiveness of the process as they're there. What's going to begin to happen if I create enough leeway in the process? The person's going to know where we're going. They're going to know the pathway that was created. They're going to know how we want to get there in terms of the energy and attitude. They're going to have a timeline, a deadline. However, they're going to have the space to evaluate. They're going to have the space to be solution focused. They're going to have the space to enter into a feedback loop where they can reflect back to me the experience of the process, and I get to reflect back to them who they're being in the process. And in the middle of that, often in the dialogue of it, best becomes better, right? What we thought was going to work may work, but in the middle of doing it, we found better. What we thought was going to work had a flaw, a blind spot that we didn't see while we were building it. And the feedback loop of accountability of getting to that place brings up data, information, all these things that allows us to make best better. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is accountability cannot be blamed. And oftentimes when people hear accountability, what they're really hearing is you are going to blame me for this. Have you ever held it that way?
Oh,
Particularly
yeah.
when you work for someone else?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if I do this wrong, they're going to blame me for when everything goes south. So one of the things when you're talking about accountability, remember I said we're going to account for your ability. We're going to create a space where you get to bring your brilliance to the table. So accountability can't be blame. What that means is there needs to be space for someone to know they can fail. There needs to be space where someone can know that they can be in a situation beyond their expertise and have to figure it out. There needs to be space for growth, and there needs to be space for calculated risk. And so when we create accountability in that context, Sharia, what begins to happen is that people get the opportunity to stretch. Because if I don't think I can fail, I won't risk and I won't stretch and I won't grow. If I don't think I can make a mistake, I won't stretch, I won't be creative. I'll just stick to status quo because now I'm being managed. What happens when you create a space for accountability, growth is inevitable, and you're now transforming people into leaders. So this is the difference. So blame is when I tell you you're wrong, you made a mistake, and I actually kind of make you feel bad about it. In my world, accountability is, so it didn't work. Let's look at it and figure out what went wrong. How do we find an answer? How do we find a solution? One of my key questions when I'm in an accountability process was, explain to me, and I've done this with you, explain to me how you got there.
Right.
And you'll go on and you'll say, well, this is what I thought. And I'll say, oh, okay. You lost me at B. And you'll be like, oh. And then we'll discuss B and you'll have the light bulb moment. Or we'll say, oh, you know what? We didn't see that. Let's try something new. In order for that to happen, you have to know that this environment is safe enough that you can bring something and be held accountable, not blamed, not shamed, and not criticized. In order for accountability to work, you and I also need to know what feedback is.
Yeah.
Right? Feedback is not criticism. So if I said to you, well, Tria, that didn't work, that's silly. One is I would shut you down, and two, you'd be mad. You'd be having some choice private words from me in your head. Not good. So this is the thing about feedback. Feedback is when I say to you, I don't think that that might be effective, and this is the reason why.
Right. Yeah.
That is feedback.
Yeah.
To tell you that something isn't right, isn't working, isn't good, isn't effective, and to not give you a reason is a cop-out on my part.
Yeah.
One. To tell you my reason and not create space for solution generation, brainstorming, is I'm actually not supporting the process.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, accountability is to remember, reflect back to me, to you, what I see, give you the reason I'm seeing it, what I see, and then create an environment for conversation.
Yeah. And I love it. So one of the things I wanted to say, two things I want to say to our super achievers. One is that I get the opportunity to do this work with you in the things that we do together in our collaboration together, but I also get the beautiful opportunity to put these things into practice with my team. And so this is one of the things I love that you said, a safe space. One of the things I was going to say is that this is so freeing when you look at accountability and you look at the process this way, because a lot of times I think what really keeps people stuck, is that blame where and the pressure that they put them under themselves to be perfect. So I know for me, myself, is like I used to hold it like I have to come to the table with the answers. And then if I don't have the answers, all of the answers, then I'm less than perfect. And then, I go into this whole story that doesn't benefit me or it doesn't benefit the team. And so I had to learn that, that's part of what accountability is like, you don't have to have all the answers. It is a safe space and we can flush through things together. And so as I practice that with my team, I'm seeing such beautiful movement because once again, how I held it before is I have to be the one who, the chief cook, bottle washer of everything, chief cook and bottle washer. So I have to come up and hold the vision. I have to come up with the process and I have to give you the steps for the process. And I got to come back and check to see if you're doing the steps in the process my way versus saying, you know what, this is a vision of what I want, where we're moving to, and then you're the expert in your field. So this is the process right here, but you are welcome to show up in your brilliance. And then we'll come back again and then we'll discuss what worked, what didn't work, where do we need to shift, what do we need to do, what needs to happen. And I have to say that operating from that space is so much better. I was trying to find a big word. But it's absolutely so much better. And you just see the shift in the attitude with the members of the team. Now everyone looks forward, to their call and look forward to their meeting time versus dreading like, oh my gosh, now I have to get on this call.
And you said something really key about, we're talking about why accountability creates leaders. And so one of the things I know is I lead a process.
Mm-hmm.
I lead a pathway. I lead the charge to get over here. That doesn't mean I do everything and I know everything. So I assemble a team of individuals, check this, who lead in an area. Now, this is the key thing here where leadership becomes amazing, is every leader needs to know when to sit down and give the floor to the expert in their team in an area and respect that expert and ask great questions.
Right.
In terms of the path we're going on. My job as the leader is to keep my eye on the pathway and keep my eye on when we're supposed to get there and the energy to which we want to get there.
Mhm.
It is not to have the answer and have my hands in everything. I am the conductor.
Right.
When we do this, what's happening is I'm causing leadership in different areas of expertise. So a great example is when I used to work in crisis, and particularly my very last team, they were gifted and talented. And one of my things was to really just find the gifts, talents, and treasures of everybody. Some people were really good at de-escalating crisis. Some people were really good at leading us in events and all these different things. And so as my team came together, I knew the captains of these expertise. And I would allow them to lead the team in the areas of their brilliance. What it did was it caused them to stand up and own their brilliance and own their expertise and to develop processes themselves
Right.
where people could follow their brilliance. So now not only am I leading, but I'm causing leadership by holding them accountable to a gifting and saying, you are going to lead our team in this expertise or this gifting. For some people, that's like, whoa, what? You want me to lead Yeah, I want you to lead everybody. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to hold you accountable. I am going to support you, but I want you to own this space.
Right.
Now I'm creating leadership and I'm creating leaders so I can collaborate with people who know when to lead and when to follow, when to stand and when to sit down.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And as you were speaking, it reminded me, of when I first started taking a look at this whole conversation about leadership and how I was so resistant to the process, right? Because I really didn't, understand truly what it means. So definitely this is a journey. So I am going to shift gears a little bit and I'm going to ask you, is there a process that, super achievers out there can follow or put into place when it comes to accountability?
Um, that there is, and I think accountability works when we are not rigid.
Okay.
Right. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. We are not rigid. However, we need to have a process.
Mhm.
So for me, one is I'm first responsible to make sure that there's a system, a pathway, one for where we're going, and two for accountability.
Mhm.
So one is we're going to be on the same page in terms of where we're going. We're going to be on the same page as to how we're going to get there. So remember I said vision, guiding principles, mission, all those things.
Right.
And most people won't look at it as a system, but it's the beginning of a system for how people come to a space and unified where they're going.
Right.
That's the first thing I'm going to make sure we have in place. And I'm also going to make sure that we're on the same page. Because I could be thinking I'm holding you accountable to one thing, and you're thinking something totally different. So one is to have that mapped out clear. Where are we going? When do we need to get there? How are we getting there? Then the second thing is to really kind of reverse engineer how to get where we're going. What needs to happen for us to get there? Remember the airport. What needs to happen? They give you the steps along the way. And the steps aren't rigid because the airport is such a great example because they don't say you can't go get a coffee on your way to your gate. They don't say you can't get a meal. They don't even tell you you can't arrive 5 hours early.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving you these markers, right?
Right.
And so what you want to do is you want to say, we want to get here, and these are the markers. These are the things we need to hit. These are the things that need to happen in order for this to occur. And these are the timelines to which they need to happen. So I've reversed engineered We know where we're going. We know how we're going to get there. We know the environment and attitude we're going to do it when. We know our markers that we must hit, and we know when we want to hit it. So now we're all clear on where we're going. Then this is the next thing. I need to create an environment of safety for accountability, right? So I need to have a conversation with people that has them understand that we are going to make mistakes.
Right.
We are going to hit roadblocks. We are going to have challenges. There's going to be times where we don't know where to go next. However, we don't quit. We don't blame. We
Right.
find solutions.
Right.
And so I've got to create an environment where there's safety for people to risk and be creative, for people to have initiative and be innovative. I need to create that environment. I need to make sure that everybody knows what feedback looks like so that we can give it to each other. And I need to also check this, ensure that everybody knows what it looks like to ask for support and help. So I'm gonna say it this way. When I led teams, I had one rule. When you come in my door of my office and you are in need of assistance, this is not the dumping ground. And what I mean by that, have you ever had someone come in and go, oh, it's just not working and I'm just frustrated, and they're looking at you like, can you fix it now? That is not accountability in my world, because you just came and put your challenge in my lap.
Right.
So this is how I set up the ask for support. One is, before you come into my office, I want you to sit and reflect on what happened and what's going on. I want you to tell me where you're stuck and what's missing.
Right.
And I want you to have a recommendation,
Right.
a possible solution, an idea, something when you come through the door. Because I want the person to take ownership for solution. If I become oh, just go ask Suzanne, she'll give you the answer, then I'm not growing leaders. I'm babysitting and managing people. I want to grow a leader. So I'm going to put the accountability for you to do some thinking, some processing, be in solution before you get in here. And now you're running your idea by me and telling me where you're stuck, where you need some help, blah, blah, blah. I want to make sure that that's happening. What ends up happening when you do that is people want to take full responsibility for finding a solution. They often come through your door and say, this is what's happening. This is why I think it broke down. This is what I'm thinking. And I just want to run this piece by you. Very different.
Yeah, and they're excited to do so.
Right? Because they know I am going to support them. I am going to help guide the process. I'm going to show them any blind spots that they may have missed. We're going to have a discussion where I'm going to empower them. And if they need to vent, I'm going to hold the space for them to do so. However, it's not the venting space. It's let's vent, get that out of the way so we can create the clearing. And venting is a release of energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just need to get this off my chest before we can continue. Get it off your chest. Are we good? Yeah, okay. So what did you come up with? What ideas do you have? And now we have the rules of engagement for accountability. And then you allow the process to live and unfold. And what ends up happening is there's just juicy learning that occurs, and people find their greatness. People find their brilliance. People move. People find the confidence that maybe they didn't have because no one created the space for them to feel safe, being creative, initiating action, and finding solutions. People learn that they can fail, get back up, brush themselves off, pick up a major solution or idea and keep moving.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So let me ask you this question.
Mhm.
What was your biggest struggle around accountability?
Ooh, gosh. Um, I think for me, unpacking it, the process of accountability has become a very vulnerable exercise for me. I have to say, because once again, it's how do I lay down, first of all, the preconceived notions, the stories that I'm making up, especially in the space where you have things that you're working on, you're charting into new territory, and things don't quite work the way that they should. And so it could be a very vulnerable process, meaning that I have to be willing to show up and say, I don't have all the answers, and not make it mean any more than I don't have all the answers. And so sometimes in my mind, I want to attach a whole bunch of meaning into, well, I don't know why, or I don't know what this is. And so
Yeah,
just being able to quiet the voices in my mind to
yeah,
get to the place where I could say, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's go back to the plan. Let's revamp the plan. Let's look at the process, what needs to be adjusted. So for me, I would have to say, like, that's the biggest thing, the vulnerability. So I love that you teed it up in your answer, creating the space and the
yeah,
environment for the discussions to happen. And as you know that you have that space, then it's up to us, it's up to me, to be vulnerable enough to come and share, because you wouldn't know what I need. My team wouldn't know what I need. And I love that we're doing this because we're in different roles, in different spaces and places in our life and in our business. And
yeah,
so sometimes we're all leaders, but sometimes we're the one who holds the vision in this spot. And then sometimes we play a part of a team to someone else who holds a bigger vision that you're a part of. So it's knowing how to navigate those environments. So sometimes I have to be willing, I shouldn't say sometimes, because it's at times, I have to be willing, to bring my vulnerable self to a space. And then at other times, I have the responsibility to create the environment to allow other people to be vulnerable.
absolutely. And you also said something that's really key, and I want to highlight it for everyone that's listening, because vulnerability and accountability work both ways, right? So
Mhm,
sometimes you see people who are the lead
mhm,
in an organization, the top, if you will, and they think accountability works this way, right? From the top down. For an organization that is really thriving, accountability has to work both ways.
right,
For people to feel safe being held accountable, they also need to be able to hold me accountable.
right.
And we've had these conversations as well, is that the communication has to be both ways, because I may not see something, you may not see something. So it has to be safe for communication to go both ways. And if it's not, then in my mind, it's not a real environment for accountability. We're going back to a management environment where I don't want to hear from you because I have the title and the position. In an environment where accountability really thrives, there's an open dialogue that allows people to troubleshoot, to give feedback, to ask questions, to do all these beautiful things that expands and creates growth. And so I want to highlight one piece that is so key for accountability to happen, and so key for accountability to happen both ways. There's this concept I learned many, many, many years ago called recovery. And I learned it in my days in social services. And one of the things that I was taught was always create space for recovery.
Mm.
And it's such a powerful thing, because what it means is I can see that you've messed up, done wrong, whatever. Maybe you don't see it yet, or maybe you just haven't mustered up the courage to name it. I have two ways to approach it. I can now hold you accountable by making you wrong
Mm-hmm.
for not stepping up, seeing the thing, da 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 da. That's one way. Or I can identify the situation, do the brainstorming with you, and create the space where you have now recovery. And recovery means, I get it, I'll go take care of it.
Yeah.
I get it, I'll go clean it up. I get it, oh my gosh, I didn't see that, I'm so sorry. Let me go rectify the situation. The more I create room for the recovery, the safer my environment becomes, and the bigger the risk people will take. This is the other thing. When I create room for recovery, it also sets a pattern for who belongs in your team and who doesn't. Because at the end of the day, I want people who will run with the opportunity to create recovery. I will soon find the people who don't want to take ownership, who don't want to take responsibility, who will pass the buck and have all their excuses. So one of the things I've learned is, as soon as I create the space for recovery, those who are committed to team and committed to growth are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'll take care of that right now. Oh my goodness. And they are grateful for the insight and the opportunity to recover. Right? Because I could handle it both ways. I could have just said you're
Right.
wrong, da 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 da. Or I can now create the environment where go ahead, go take care of it. I'm going to hold the space for you. I'm going to give you a timeline. I'm going to give you some space to do it. And it's going to happen. So I have been known, particularly when I led teams, to go over to someone and say, I noticed something, and they'll be like, oh, and I noticed this, and they'll be like, oh, yeah. And I'll say, you have today
Mm-hmm.
to clean it up. And they'll be, thank you. Okay. And it might be that they just needed the nudge.
Right.
Right. And I'll be like, anything you need from me? And most of the time it's like, no, I know exactly what I got to do. Okay, cool. And so this accountability process is just really creating this environment for leaders to grow and develop.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we are at the top of our show, Suzanne. So I'm going to let you go ahead and close our super achievers out with the thought of the week.
I found this thought was so fitting for what we were talking about. And I was like, accountability quote. There was loads, Taria. However, nothing really reflected our conversation. But I love this one, and I love this one. Responsibility equals accountability. Accountability equals ownership. And a sense of ownership is the most powerful thing a team or organization can have. Pat Summitt.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. And I love the word that that Pat is using in here is a sense of ownership, because that's what we all want. We all want each member of our team to have ownership of their particular role. So I love it. Suzanne, it's always such a pleasure to sit down and have these conversations with you. I know we just give our super achievers a little sneak peek. I know we go back and forth in these conversations in our day-to-day working, but it's always, such a joy, to bring them forward facing to our community.
Absolutely. And I recommend to everyone listening that if you don't have a space where you can do this, we have a lot of solopreneurs that follow us. If you don't have a space where you can safely go and banter, safely go and just lay your ideas and your struggles and your frustrations bare, create that space, whether that be hiring someone to create it, to help you create it, getting a partner that you trust who will stand for you and stand for your greatness. Because when you're up to big things and you're up to creating massive success, you are going to have blind spots. You are going to have breakdowns. You are going to fail. You're going to run into doubt. You're going to run into so much stuff. And if you're navigating it on your own, it's going to be way more difficult, and your success is going to be limited. If you want to catapult success, get yourself an accountability person, paid or unpaid. Make it so.
Love it.
All right. So we're done, aren't we? This was, every time we sit down to chat, it just flies. All right, everybody. You have been here with the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart. I have been in great conversation with Taria Hodge, and we are here every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until we meet again, please know you are brilliant. Know you are oh so very special. And we do this work because the world is waiting. The world is waiting for you to put your unique gift into the marketplace. Blessings, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.